Okay, so I listened to the Manuscript, which is a track off of the Tortured Popes Department album, which was just released, and I had to make this video. Like, wow, this one kind of rocked me. Taylor, you didn't have to do us like this. Like, wow. But I I'm pretty certain that this track is directly about Jake Gyllenhaal and is actually referencing All Too Well throughout most of the song, which I'll explain why through in a minute. But first, a little bit of background. So, just for those of you who don't know, Taylor and Jake dated in 2010. She was 20, he was 29. So there was a 9 year age difference. And I don't have as much of a problem with the 9 year age difference as I do with the fact that they were at completely different stages in life and in their careers. So the age was a major factor in this relationship in making it something that was really toxic and harmful for her and really damaging and really hard to heal from, which is why she wrote All Too Well, which is why she did the 10-minute version of All Too Well, which is why she made the short film. So, and I think that this track, the Manuscript, is like her finally, it's like this the sequel to All Too Well, and it's also her like finally closing this chapter and finally like healing from it and being able to like almost disconnect herself from it a bit. So I'm gonna go into some of the lyrics and why I think that this is related to Jake Gyllenhaal and what she describes in All Too Well. Okay, so first, I wanted to share the definition of a manuscript. It says a book or document or piece of music written by hand, or it also could be an author's text that has not yet been published. So, in the short film of All Too Well, in the end of the film, she has red hair, which she looks beautiful with red hair, of course, and she is at her book signing. And she is so the implication is that she wrote a book, and she has not written a book yet. If she did, I would buy like a pre like I would be on the list to receive that book right away. I would have it pre-ordered, is what I was trying to say. But yeah, so the when I hear the word manuscript, I think of like her writing a book, which happened in All Too Well. It has not happened in real life yet. But what's really interesting is that if you look at the lyric video, it doesn't show a manuscript. It actually shows a screenplay, which also makes me think of the short film of All Too Well. So let's take a look at some of the lyrics. Okay, so it says, now and then she rereads the manuscript of the entire torrid affair. So she has called her relationship with Jake an affair in All Too Well. At the end, she says, just between us, did the love affair maim you too? So just because she uses that word directly, that makes me think that it is related to that. I'm also wondering if illicit affairs could be about him. She said that it's fictional, so I have to take her word on that, but it's possible. And the reason that it was really an affair is like it wasn't a public relationship. We didn't really know too much about it until after it ended. And she kind of explains this in All Too Well. She's when she says, I kept you like a secret, or you kept me like a secret, but I kept you like an oath. Like she's saying I kept this secret because I was loyal to you and I trusted you and like you could trust me. And she's saying you kept it a secret because like maybe you were ashamed or embarrassed to be with me or something. Like that's kind of how I took that line. So anyway, okay, moving on. The next line say they compared their licenses. He said, I'm not a donor, but I'd give you my heart if you needed it. So the reason that I think this also is like a correlation to All Too Well is because of the driving references and like the driving paraphernalia, so to speak. Because in All Too Well, she describes how they took some short getaway weekend trips, like upstate to the Hudson, things like that, which is beautiful in the fall. So I get why they did that. But she says, like you were tossing me the car keys, keychain on the ground. We were always skipping town. So I'm wondering, like maybe they were renting cars and like both had to show their licenses or something. So that's why they were looking at their licenses. But yeah, so that also made me think of All Too Well. Licenses, car keys, I just associate those things with each other. Um, Okay, and then we have to talk about this line. He said that if the sex was half as good as the conversation was, soon they'd be pushing strollers, but soon it was over. Taylor, just let that sink in for a minute. I mean, so we all know that she more or less said that she lost her virginity to him, which is signified by the scarf in All Too Well. She left it at his actually at his sister's house. She said that the scarf represents her virginity. Maggie Gyllenhaal, Jake's sister, was seen wearing the scarf. So we're not going to unpack that right now, like the Freudian psychology behind that. We don't have time, but but Yeah, so I'm like wondering, like, at this point, he's saying this to her, like, they probably didn't do that yet. So, like, why, like, if they did, that's a really messed up thing to say. Like, you're basically saying it wasn't very good, but if it was good, like we get along so well, we'll be getting married and having babies. Like that's a crazy thing to say. Like, that's crazy. Okay. And then the next line. Oh, and then she says, sorry. The next line is, but soon it was over. This also makes me think of her relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal because we know it was not a long relationship. It was only a few months, more of a situationship, but I'm just calling it a relationship to be general with it. But yeah, but soon it was over. Like it wasn't, she had a lot of long relationships. This was not. So that's why I think it's about him. And then it says, in the age of him, she wished she was 30 and made coffee every morning in a French press. So he was 29. If she was 30, it would have been an age appropriate relationship, like a very normal relationship where they'd be at the same stage in life and like making coffee in a French press, I feel like is such a fancy adult thing to do. Like I don't have a French press. I have an espresso machine, but it just feels like something that grown-up people do, not something that 20-year-olds do, but it's something that 20-year-olds imagine them doing at 30. So there's that. And then it says afterwards, she only ate kid cereal and couldn't sleep unless it was in her mother's bed. So that makes me think like after this, she was so like traumatized by what happened that she almost reverted back into a childlike version of herself. And she was like eating tricks and Lucky Charms and like sleeping with her mom at night because it impacted her that much. And which we know this situationship did impact her. And then the next line, okay. It says then she dated boys who were her own age. So we know that Jake is not like actually the only older guy she's dated. She dated John Mayer. She wrote explicitly about this as well in Dear John and in Would Have, Could Have, Should Have. And in Dear John, she says, "Don't you think 19 was too young to be played by your dark twisted games?" In Would Have, Could Have, Should Have, she said like, and I damn sure never would have danced with the devil at 19. And the God's honest truth was the pain was heaven. Okay, so she's like talked about in that relationship, she felt like she was too young as well. But after she dated John Mayer, she did go on a couple years later to date Jake Gyllenhaal. But this line says, then she dated boys who were her own age. And it's funny that she says boys, um, not men. So there's that. But yeah, so that makes me think it couldn't be about John Mayer, which some people speculate. It has to be about Jake because after John Mayer, she still didn't date boys who were her own age. Um, okay, so then we're gonna get into this last verse here. It says, and the years passed like scenes of a show. The professor said to write what you know. Looking backwards might be the only way to move forward. Then the actors were hitting their marks, and the slow dance was all right with the sparks, and the tears fell in synchronicity with the score. And at last she knew what the agony had been for. So there's a lot of like references here to actors and show, and we know that like that makes me think of the short film of All Too Well, especially when it says, and the tears fell in synchronicity with the score. Like in the short film, Sadie Sink, who is the actress, she was crying in the movie, when they had like a fight and broke up. She was also crying during the actual song, like when it says, and the tears fell in synchronicity with the score. And then it also says like the actors were hitting their marks and the slow dance started. In All Too Well, they reference we're dancing around the kitchen in the refrigerator light. I always envisioned that being a slow dance. I don't know why. It says the only thing that's left, and then it says she knew what the agony had been for. So it's almost like this came into full circle. Like she gets why she went through this now. One other thing that I forgot to mention, it's something that I love that Taylor does. I wanted to go back to the line, in the age of him, she wished she was 30. I love how she uses kind of like is playing with the definition of age. Like in the age of him, she's not really saying like his age. She's saying like the era of him or the stage of him. She wished she was 30. Now she's talking about an actual age. That is something I meant to say that earlier, but she does that a lot in her songs, like plays with the meanings of words like shade and like there's so many other definitions. And I just think that's so cool. Um, anyway, the last verse here, that only thing that's left is the manuscript. One last souvenir from my trip to your shores. Now and then I reread the manuscript, but this story isn't mine anymore. I'm just so proud of her, like for the way she's been able to publicly heal from this, despite all the backlash she gets, and like the fact that she's willing to share this and like she's healed, like she's moved on, she did it. And I'm so proud of her. And I think that this last line is like when she says, but the story isn't mine anymore, she's like disconnecting from it. And she has to reread the manuscript to even remember it. And she's like, I don't, did this really even happen to me? Yes, it did. But like, I just feel like her writing all too well, doing the 10-minute version, doing the short film was like the way she processed it and the way she healed from it and moved on and eventually detached herself from it. And I think that's really inspiring and really powerful. And I love this woman so much.